Napa know-how. It takes a lot to get excited about a bag, but most bags can't save you 20% on parts and accessories. That's 20% off brake pads, 20% off oil filters, 20% off virtually anything you can fit inside the 99-cent Napa reusable bag. So tell your buddies there's a bag they just have to check out. Quality parts, helpful people. That's Napa know-how. Napa know-how. At participating Napa Auto Parts stores while supplies last. Minimum 3 items. Exclusions apply. Offer ends 10/31/18.
TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand.
I can't tell you how much I enjoyed saying touch 'em all.
Way back and gone! Touch 'em all, Joe Mauer!
And now these guys are making it relevant to this year's Twins.
Now, our 2 resident hardball nerds will attempt to touch 'em all on the week's news surrounding the Twins in MLB. Here's Phil Mackey and Derek Wetmore.
Hey, welcome to the Touch 'em All podcast. This is Derek Wetmore. No Phil Mackey today, but I brought in a special guest. Jake Depue covers the minor leagues and the Minnesota Twins for 1500ESPN.com. Jake, how's it going, man?
Not too bad. Not too bad. How are you, Derek?
Good. And Jake is in Boston right now. Is that right?
That is correct.
Good. So we're testing out the new studio. And listeners, if you have any problems with the sound, and I don't mean the sound of our respective voices, just the sound of the microphones, let us know. If you have a sound problem with our voices, you're going to have to get over that because that's going to be here the whole episode.
Yep, that's not changing.
That's not a lot we can do about that, unfortunately. Jake, this is an interesting time for the Twins. I've said on multiple podcasts and videos this winter is going to be the biggest for the Twins in the time that I've covered the team. It's a short time, but let's even stretch that back to the start of Target Field. This is the most important offseason for the Twins since the start of Target Field, and on top of that, they're looking for a new manager. What do you think about the direction, knowing that there were 2 years left on Paul Molitor's contract, and I know you've been over this, but to move on and then try to find some new candidate? What did you think about the decision, first of all, and then we'll get into some of the candidates?
Yeah, I'm conflicted on the decision because I guess the way I view this is based on my relatively small sample size of interacting with Molitor, but 20, 25 games, including spring training and stuff. I feel like I have a decent perspective just in terms of immediate perspective, obviously. But I really liked Molitor as a guy, which I know is a very Minnesotan thing to say.
Yes, you've perfected that.
Yeah. And, I thought he definitely has his weak points. I thought overall he did a good job. But I try to look at this from a player perspective, and in particular a young player perspective, because Salvi and Levine sort of hinted at that if you kind of listen between the lines, so to speak, at their press conference.
Yeah.
They basically hinted at the fact that he wasn't connecting with young players. And when I look at Molitor, I see a guy who's incredibly even-keeled, maybe to a fault. So I personally would love if in some extremely alternate reality I was a good enough baseball player to be a big leaguer. I would love to play for a guy like Molitor who's very even-keeled and laid back and doesn't give rah-rah speeches.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure that's the case for a 23 or 24-year-old player.
Sure.
So I look at somebody like PJ Fleck, who I would rather, I'm going to put this delicately, I would not like to play for a guy like that. I'll just leave it.
I'd transfer. I mean, but I don't know if my 18-year-old self would transfer. But luckily for me, Jake, and for you, actually, neither one of us was able to play Major League Baseball or Division I college football, as it turned out.
That is correct. I don't know about you, but I'm guessing that you were about as far away from those two things.
Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself, my friend.
Yeah, but I recognize, even though I totally dislike that style of coaching, the Fleck style, and think it's a little bit absurd and certainly way over the top. But I recognize that 18 to 19-year-olds respond to that,
sure,
for better or worse.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
So I recognize that that's the case, and so I have to look at it from that perspective, because guys like Sano and Buxton aren't that much older than the players playing at the U. And if those guys respond to that style, then maybe the Twins need somebody who's not at a Fleckian level, for sure. But somebody who's maybe approaching that a little bit more than Molitor, who I feel like is on the exact opposite end of that.
Yeah, that's right. I think we're beating around the bush a little bit. They basically said in the press conference that Paul Molitor can't connect with millennials.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it's weird because then they turned around and in the same breath, apparently they're perfecting the Minnesota passive-aggressive compliment insult too, because they said, it's not that Paul couldn't. In fact, he was exceptional at connecting with young players. We're just looking for somebody different at connecting with young players. It's like, come on, just say it. It's fine. I think there's this element of Molitor's dismissal that is being buried in mystery. And honestly, Jake, maybe that's only 10% of it. Maybe the other 90% is stuff we'll never know. Or maybe 10% is bad bullpen management. 10% is if you get in little disagreements over the roster or anything like that. My sense, though, is that those guys are comfortable with disagreement and that you want somebody to push back. Smart people in a room reaching a consensus is going to be the best decision. So who knows what percentage, all of that kind of stuff. We'd just be guessing, but there was definitely an element to the press conference of providing resources for young players to thrive in building relationships and motivation. And that to me sounds like these millennials just want to play Fortnite and can't bring their own energy to the park. And the one thing that I do know about Molitor is he's a very bring your own energy to the park kind of guy. He was not the Fleckian leader, as you termed it. So I'm kind of curious to know, as you read through some of the reported candidates, Jake, like some of the people who are interviewing or some of the people that maybe have not been reported yet, but you think the Twins should go after. If your Rolodex really runs deep, my curiosity is, do you think they need to find somebody that's like that? That's almost PJ Fleck does not exist in baseball. He would be weeded out through the system, but there are guys. I mean, AJ Hinch is a little more rah-rah. I'm just thinking about recent managers who were hired, and they're just about all more rah-rah than Paul Molitor, without knowing them on a personal level. I mean, you look, Alex Cora, Boone in New York, Hinch, Lavello, these type of managers, and I say type, I just mean guys that didn't necessarily have any managing experience and are just like that figurehead for the field staff. I don't know. This is a rambling question, but do you think they need to seek that out as they as they go through their search for a new manager?
Yeah, I do. I think they need to find someone younger, and so here was one of my issues with Molitor, is that he was so laid back that I felt like at times he wouldn't defend his players during games when they got in disagreements, and that would bother me even as an older millennial, right? So like you saw Alex Cora in game one of the ALCS get thrown out, essentially defending his player. You know, if your catcher gets in a disagreement with an umpire or your hitter is mad at the umpire, justifiably or not, go out there and defend them and get tossed. I'm not saying you have to be guardy, but get tossed out of a game every once in a while just to show your guys that you're with them.
It's funny how much I've come around on that. If you would have told me 3 years ago that you didn't like Molitor because, God, just get tossed, I'd be like, okay, guy. But now I'm right there with you. I'm 100% on board with that. I think there is something to that.
I agree, and I think I would respect that and appreciate that as a player. And there were a lot of times during Twins games the last couple of years where somebody would be really irate and the camera would pan to Molitor and he'd just be, kind of standing at the top step of the dugout with a blank look on his face.
Yeah.
And that would bother me a little bit.
So
I get that. So to answer your question, I think they need somebody younger and a little bit more fiery. Again, nowhere near Fleck levels, and I'm imagining PJ Fleck as a baseball manager, and it's hilarious in my head. But
he does say failure is growth, and there's a lot of failure in baseball, so that might work out pretty well, actually.
That is true. But I don't know about all the sprinting around.
Sure.
And but I think also somebody who isn't just willing to embrace analytics isn't just willing to put on a shift or whatever, but is somebody who really truly understands it and is fully on board. So I think Molitor was very open-minded in terms of implementing what they wanted to do in terms of analytics.
Sure.
But I don't know that he was an analytics-first manager the way Cora and Hinch and those guys seem to be.
That's accurate. Not to cut you off, I'll let you finish your point in a second, but he is an analytics acceptor, not an analytics driver, and I'm not saying that's for better or for worse, but you do look at the Twins and say they were a pretty shifty team. They understood the value of defense, obviously. Jason Castro, Byron Buxton, those guys go down, you lose a lot, and they also use the opener a small handful of times, so it's not like they are allergic to analytics under Molitor, but they were like, he was very open to analytics. We're just looking for somebody who's into analytics. It's like, okay, there's got to be something there. But anyways, I cut you off. I'll let you finish your point.
Well, first of all, let me say nice job on avoiding the Freudian slip by saying they were a very shifty team.
Yes. In fact, they won 78 games, so I don't know that the slip would have occurred.
Yeah, well, that's true. But, yeah, I mean, I think my guess, and this is total speculation, is that Falvey and Levine felt like they had to do a lot of educating of Molitor. Here's why this makes sense. Here's why we use this particular metric. And basically saying, look, just implement this even if you don't totally agree with it. And I mean, those guys are so analytics oriented that they would want someone who they don't have to explain everything to, that is on board and gets it and knows what they're doing and will just kind of do it on their own.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess I hope they're not looking for a pushover.
Right. Well, yeah, and maybe they are.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know.
They didn't say that in the press conference.
What's that?
They didn't say that in the press conference. Maybe it's one of those that just had to go unsaid because you can't say, I'm looking to hire somebody that we can push around and manipulate like a puppet in this role. Right.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting. If I had to guess, it'll be somebody much younger and somebody obviously who's analytically inclined. But my money's on Derek Shelton. I said that.
Okay.
As soon as Molitor got fired, I tweeted out that I thought it would be Derek Shelton, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that I covered that Boston series when all that stuff went down and all the trades went down, and then Molitor left on that Saturday to go to Cooperstown for Jack Morris's speech, right, induction speech. And so Derek Shelton managed the last two games of that series, and he was much higher energy again, for better or worse, he was much higher energy, I felt, than Molitor. And he was a Rays guy and an Indians guy who Falvey and Levine hired, right? So obviously Molitor wasn't their hire. Shelton was, and he was hired as kind of a quality control guy who has a background in analytics, has a background in some of these really progressive organizations. And he really stood out to me. I was impressed with him during his media scrums.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more high energy than Molitor and incorporated more analytics into just his sort of everyday speak. So it wouldn't shock me at all if that's the direction they go.
Sure. I like Shelton enough. I wasn't at that Boston series. I did read David Laurela's piece on Fangraphs about Shelton and his ideas about managing. Now, it wasn't written at the time saying, hey, if you're the next manager of the Twins, how are you going to do it? He was just like, what are your philosophies of educating players? And, people talk about analytics, and it's like, you can't just say analytics and the problem is solved. It's how do you communicate this with an Eddie Rosario and get him to refine his strike zone, which for 3 months they were great at, and then for 3 months he apparently forgot that education. And so I don't know. Maybe that's an unfair shot at Rosario. My point is just that, like, how can you take Kyle Gibson and say, hey, that fastball at the top of the zone, that four-seamer upstairs that actually has a little run to it, you can use that to set up your curveball. And if Kyle Gibson says, that's great in theory, but I'm trying to get ground balls and outs, then that's an impasse. But if you can get Kyle Gibson to buy into that, now you have a 2018 Kyle Gibson, which looks a lot better than first half 2017 Gibson. So anyways, if listeners are curious, they can check out that Laurela piece on Fangraphs about Derek Shelton, and I'll probably write about that this week because it's really interesting. Like, his job interview is out there on the internet. We can read it right now.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And David's a good writer, and absolutely people should check that out. One thing that I thought was interesting from that series is somebody asked Molitor, a reporter asked Molitor the day before he left, because we were talking about Shelton, how he's going to take over. A reporter asked him, do you think that Shelton has aspirations to be a manager? And he said no, he didn't think he did. And then that same reporter asked Shelton the very next day, and Shelton said, yes, I would absolutely like to manage in the big leagues one
Interesting.
day. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know what we can read into that other than that's obviously not something that they talked about for whatever reason, because Molitor had a very different opinion.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair thing to read into that.
Yeah.
I just quickly, do you have a favorite candidate, or if they go outside the organization, if it's not Shelton, has any name come across a report or something, or somebody who hasn't come across a report and you think, like, how is this guy not getting big league manager steam?
I mean, aside from Phil Mackey.
Right. That's right. He asked me on the day Molitor was fired, not him, but his show cohorts asked me to put in a good word with the brain trust with the Twins while I was over there. I somehow didn't feel right about that.
I think Phil would be fully on board, though. I think he would leave his new duties at 1,500.
If it's Phil, he would say that he is all in. He's not.
Yes.
He's either 100% all in or like 50% all in.
Yes, he would be all in.
No names jump out to you, not Phil Mackey or Derek Shelton?
Well, no. So, yeah, to answer your question seriously, I guess Sandy Alomar Jr. is one.
Okay.
Because I think there's a lot of value in having a Spanish-speaking manager.
Sure.
You know? I mean,
true.
I think that there are so many. God, how many guys in the Twins starting lineup are, have Spanish as their first language?
Yeah, how many guys are in the Twins starting lineup written in pen? That's a fair question, but
yeah, I mean, I think Alex Cora probably. I think that's probably a big factor in him. I mean, he's a very good manager, but I think that was probably something that was really in his favor. So I don't know, somebody like Sandy Alomar Jr. sticks out to me as a possibility. Brad Mills, just because of his Cleveland connections with Salvi, is one, although I don't know enough about him to really speak with any sort of expertise.
Sure, same.
So yeah, I guess those two. But Rocco Baldelli is an interesting one.
Yeah.
He's a really intelligent ex-player who's again in a very progressive organization with the Rays.
All right, well, I guess I'll circle up with you once they have a manager and Manny Machado and Clayton Kershaw and Andrew Miller in their stead. And then if they trade for JT Realmuto, I think we'd all feel a little bit better about their odds for 2019.
It's going to be a heck of a podcast. Can't wait.
Thanks for your time, Jake. We'll talk to you later.
All right, thanks, Derek.
The Canopy Group would like to thank State Farm, American Family, and Liberty Mutual for all of their future notifications. These notifications are delivered every 6 months to your mailbox as your insurance bill. These insurance companies have the ability to increase your insurance premium every 6 months, and your agent can't do anything about it. Your agent has no options, just the one company. So if you go to your mailbox and open your 6-month policy to discover yet another significant premium increase, do not panic. Think Canopy Group. The Canopy Group has 16 different insurance companies for you, 16 different options. The Canopy Group offers only annual policies. That limits the insurance company's ability to increase your premium. They can only do it once a year rather than twice. Coming soon, another 6-month policy increase for you. Don't panic. Contact the Canopy Group at 800-967-3389 or go online to thecanopygroup.com.
Napa know-how. It takes a lot to get excited about a bag, but most bags can't save you 20% on parts and accessories. That's 20% off brake pads, 20% off oil filters, 20% off virtually anything you can fit inside the 99-cent Napa reusable bag. So tell your buddies there's a bag they just have to check out. Quality parts, helpful people. That's Napa know-how. Napa know-how. At participating Napa Auto Parts stores while supplies last. Minimum 3 items. Exclusions apply. Offer ends 10/31/18.
Missing writer. I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. Turkish authorities will search the residence of the top Saudi diplomat in Istanbul over the disappearance of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. He was last seen 2 weeks ago. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met with Saudi King Salman today in Riyadh. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights wants Saudi Arabia and Turkey to reveal everything. Rupert Colville is a UN spokesman.
The High Commissioner is urging the authorities of both countries, and I quote her at this point, to ensure that no further obstacles are placed in the way of a prompt, thorough, effective, impartial, and transparent investigation.
Turkish officials say they fear Khashoggi was killed and dismembered inside the Saudi consulate. Police say a girl resembling a missing Wisconsin teenager has been spotted at a gas station in Florida. Authorities have been searching for 13-year-old Jamie Kloss since early yesterday. Her parents were found dead in their home in Barron, Wisconsin. I'm Ed Donahue.